Yeah, it's my first time. I think you can tell I'm nervous. Writing the script, recording your voice, editing it, uploading on the YouTube. But I'm exaggerating, obviously. After all, it's just something new. Nothing to be worried about. Am I right? And yet, so often are we scared of the new, the different. We are afraid of change. Though change is just that, something new. You go from the one state to the other. I have an issue with people telling me that change is always good, that you must go forward. The truth is, if you're okay with where you are, then do not move. Maybe take a seat if your legs are tired. Or hell, lay in a bed if you must to, you lazy piece of shit. Okay, it's obvious. It's obvious that change may be good for you. But being good or bad is very biased, subjective, relative. I would name two factors that define change. Whether it is good or bad for us personally, and also whether this change is quick or rather slow. The example of quick change would be shaving your beard off after growing it for 5 years. A slow change, on the other hand, would be growing that beard for those 5 years. Basically, the slow change happens over time. Yeah, I know, no shit Sherlock. The God of War series began from its first installment in 2005, ending on the latest game has gone through a lot of changes. Undeniably, most of them have happened during the production of the newest God of War, 2018. So, the big change. As it is with every big change, they tend to get a really bad rap. And so did this one, of course. People were saying, it is nothing like before. This is no longer Kratos. It isn't God of War anymore. Blah 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 blah. To be honest, I think this is a lot of bullshit. I don't like this kind of attitude, as you might already guessed, but I wasn't sure why. After all, those people were right. The game from 2018 is drastically different from the one from 2005. Besides, gamers, they very rarely were saying that those changes were bad. Quite the opposite. They praised them. Okay, so why did I make this video? Get closer. A bit closer. Okay. Between us, don't tell anybody. And the multitude of new games coming out every month. Games that I wanna play. Games that I should play, or at least watch somebody play them on the YouTube to be up to date. I was looking out for excuse. An excuse to play once again one of the best games ever made. And to share with you my thoughts on the game that made huge impression on me. And maybe, but just maybe, don't expect too much, somewhere in the process try to explain why God of War was never God of War in the first place. Many people complain that game from 2018 is not longer a God of War game. Some would call them purists, similar to those who stated that none of first-person Fallouts are really Fallout games. Of course, I think that Fallout New Vegas is great Fallout, okay? It's okay, I think, to have different opinion. It's your own opinion, okay? You have right to have your own opinion, but I think it doesn't mean we should respect everybody's opinions. I think that we should confront each other and learn from open-minded conversations. This is the way that we could get to know ourselves, by letting others get to know us first. It is very important that we talk about our tastes. Otherwise, we'll be stuck in the same place without any changes. And changes are mucho importante, which for those of you who don't speak Chinese means that they are very important. Nobody can stay in the same place for too long, even Spartan Godslayer. I'm obviously talking about God of War series. I don't know about you, but I don't see the point in finding out what the true heart of those games is. I'm not here to establish some sacred God of War canon. In my humble opinion, game from 2018 is undeniably a God of War game, but with a few changes. God of War, God of War 2, God of War 3, God of War 2018. I've already talked about quick and slow change. You can name them respectively, Revolution and Evolution. For some weird reason, people more often have problem with the former one. The Revolution, first installment, significantly varied from the last game of the Greek trilogy. You can't deny it. Over the course of following years, various mechanics were added, upgrading upon the core idea of first title. The ability to parry enemy attacks, even the projectile ones. This change was made in God of War 2. The lack of the boss's health bar, also second game. The change of a mana bar to the one that refills itself over time very quickly, that was in the third game. The requirement to use different than a crossblade weapon, Infinity Gauntlets in third installment were essential to killing one of the bosses. In addition to that, there were a lot of minor game changes that I won't be listing out cause that's not my point. What am I trying to say is, the changes were there from the very first sequel, but you don't hear fan arguing about that God of War 3 is not a God of War game. I need you to understand me. I know that there isn't a person living on this planet who doesn't like the newest God of War as a standalone game, and even if it were, such a person wouldn't admit. But still, gamers aren't pleased with it as a God of War sequel, at least many of them. The only question is why. I think that Santa Monica Studio went too far with their changes and it transformed from slow, boring and safe evolution to the surprising, dynamic and highly risky revolution. You see, as I've already said, revolutions have a tendency to be controversial. The game turned out to be commercial success and outstanding production, and yet, for many fans, not enough God of War. Yeah, I'm aware. I know that I'm repeating myself, think over and over. It's a great game, but not so good God of War. But I think it is a very important problem. We, and I mean not only as gamers, generally speaking as people, have a tendency to idealizing experiences. We build the false image of the past experience. Because of that, it is impossible to play the game or watch a movie again and again and feel the same way as the first time. And frankly, I find it to be really sad that you cannot experience something twice the same. Let's finally talk business, shall we? Most significant changes are those that have to do with how Kratos fights. In previous titles, the camera was flying high above the battleground. Thanks to that, player knew his surrounding very well. Besides that, enemies had relatively low amount of HP, which is why they were treated less like an individual opponent and more like a group or even a horde, which was defeat as quickly as possible. And don't forget about Kratos' weapon of choice. Yeah, don't forget about that. Iconic Chaos Blades are one of the most recognizable pieces of arms in gaming history, and they are for a good reason. Their design is great. Okay, it's just genius. And I know it's pretty much obvious, but they're that good, okay? Their genius lies in a way they perfectly fit in design decisions that I've covered previously. Camera and enemy design. Well, man, where do I even start? The most important thing, in my opinion, is their reach, their length. Blades are placed on the end of very long chain, which enables Kratos to reach with his swings even those enemies that are very far from him. There is even such an attack in God of War 3 which allows you to immediately close the distance between Kratos and his opponent. Adding to that, blades cover great surface area, which lets you deal damage to many opponents at once. That just perfectly suits enemy design. The windmill attack even hits the enemies that are behind Kratos, but why do we know that somebody is behind him, you might ask? Thanks to panoramic view on the battlefield. Do you see how we looped back to the camera and enemies? That's because those three elements of the game design coexist and strengthen each other. Don't know about you, I personally love when game designers, well, design stuff having in mind other stuff that they've designed previously. Let's call it empathetic game design for the sake of simplicity. I think this is one of the signs of brilliant game design. While living in Midgard, Kratos had to unlearn his Spartan training, his fighting style, strategy of encounter, and his view on the battlefield have drastically changed. Similarly, let's start with the camera. Now the camera hangs low behind Kratos' back. This gives us much narrower view. On the one hand, it's pretty bad and confusing at first. On the other hand, it's quite smart. It forces player to more tactic approach. Now you must consider your position in regard to enemies. Maybe let's talk about them, enemies. 4th God of War encourage you to focus more on the individual opponent. They are no longer nameless zombies which you hack and slash with your blades. While fighting, the majority of time is spent thinking strategically. Let me show that on Dragor's health. It's bigger. At least it seems to be bigger thanks to this green or purple bar floating above him, threatening to fall down on his head. See? He is in constant stress. And that's why he is making diary. Well, Kratos' son, Atreus, is making one, but it's all about them. Devs wanted you to pay more attention to enemies. Is it because they're mental problems, or is it just how they wanted it to be? Don't ask me, who am I to say? And finally, the arms. Chaos Blade stepped aside to make a room for praiseworthy descendant, the Leviathan axe. You don't have to be Mimir to know that this axe will soon become as iconic as Greek blades. Its biggest difference? Its length. From the northern chills, Kratos' weapon has shrinked a little. But it's good, that's not a problem for a god like him. Remember what I've said about empathetic game design? The axe perfectly coexist and strengthen the camera movement and enemy design. Its reach makes hitting 2 enemies very hard, and more than 2 nearly impossible. We are no longer treating them like some kind of horde. Because of that, you are spurred on to constantly think about your position. Is it better to finish off that nearby Dragor, or rather run up to the further Revenant which can shoot poison at you? My friend, that is interactivity. And interactivity is what makes games. This isn't like watching a movie where you can just sit and enjoy while at the same time thinking about your lunch at McDonald's or KFC. No offense to movies are great, but games? They engage you in a way movies will never. While playing a game, it applies to most of them. You have to be conscious, vigilant, alert. That's the reason why I love games. I have to be honest with you. I lied. There's a hidden catch to the Leviathan axe. It has even bigger range than Chaos Blades. Here's once again a scenario with close range Dragor and range Revenant, but done with an axe throw. I think it's a good place for try say it 3 times faster joke. Range Revenant, range Revenant, range. This adds new layer to your planning options, and if you throw your weapon away, you'll have to fight with your bare hands for a moment, which is pretty awesome if you ask me. Look, you can even try to hit enemy in the head to freeze it. This rewards more precise players. Another really cool thing is that you can aim at Dragor's leg and flip him over. That's just fun for me to do. Maybe I'm a sadist. Or some psycho. Or... No, never mind. In my opinion, the more options game gives you to deal with fighting problem, the better the game is. So, for clarity's sake, we can put it this way. In Greek trilogy, camera was giving us panoramic view on the battlefield. Enemies had low HP and were treated like a group. The weapon was long-ranged blades and it was covering big surface area. Original trilogy encouraged less personal combat, figuratively and literally. The player should fight enemies like horde, slashing them with weapon, great for crowd control. In the Norse adventure, on the other hand, camera is hanging low behind Kratos' back. There is more individual approach to the enemies, and weapon has short reach while chopping, but great reach while throwing. New games bring fresh ideas to the old formula. The change of perspective more or less forces player to carefully plan his or her moves, to consider surrounding and to treat enemies more personally. I've mentioned before that I value a lot games that have mechanics and even whole systems working together to get a better result. That's how you know whether the game is potential masterpiece or simply... I don't know. Recycling is good for our planet, isn't it? It's also good while projecting or designing game systems. I really like when things in games fulfill multiple purposes. Chaos Blades, as I previously showed, are excellent weapon. But besides being a god-killing tool, they are very important for the narrative. To the uninitiated, Kratos had an episode in his life when he was Ares' slave, to put it simply. He was slaughtering in many cases innocent people in the name of the god of war, up to the point when he has killed his own family. Therefore, blades are physical proof of Kratos' slavery. His weapon keeps reminding us of the horrible act that he made. Aside from fulfilling combat and narrative purposes, since second game, Kratos has used his blades to exploring levels. The Leviathan axe from the newest installment is also used in many ways. You can chop with it, you can throw it, you can freeze or flip enemies over. You can freeze contraptions to solve simple environmental puzzles. During the game you can learn about its past, get to know its creators. You can take it to the cinema or Italian restaurant where you will realize that they don't serve pasta, so you'll get angry and chop chef's head off. Cause what Italian restaurant doesn't serve pasta? Okay, maybe I moved too far with the last example, but think about it. What if instead of axe there were many other weapons which you'd choose via weapon wheels of some sort? A weapon to melee combat, another for long range attacks, and another for freezing enemies, for puzzle solving, and an item for narrative purposes. This would undeniably weaken connection with you and your weapon. I have trouble finding words to express how good, how great this weapon is, how great systems in God of War are. So I'm gonna listen to common advice. Show, don't tell. You're welcome. I know, that's only tip of an iceberg, or even tip of a tip of an iceberg. Well, God of War 2018 is a really massive game which is out for over a year now, and I could go on for hours, quite literally, talking about its many aspects that I haven't even mentioned in my short video. About engaging story with well-written characters, about specific bosses, about world building and so on. But I would like to be fair with you, whoever is watching this shitty analysis, and with other game critics like Matthew Matthiosis, Joseph Anderson, Mark Brown. They have made in-depth materials on this topic and I don't have interest in waffling about things that have already been said. If you're curious on topics that I haven't brought up, I recommend checking those gentlemen's channels. If you for some strange reason wanna know my opinion on those subjects, just write a comment, I'll be pleased to write back. In the end, I'd like to make long-form video game analysis my main content on this channel. I hope it will work out. As you see, there are a few minutes left. That's because it isn't over yet. I'm gonna end this listing out in random order some loose thoughts. There isn't much of those. I'll be quick. So let's start with the camera. I love how great camera movement is in this game. The fact that it seems to have been shot in one take is quite impressive, I would say. And camera work in particular scenes is outstanding. Just look at this.
My turn.
Or this one when Kratos is running after Baldur. It makes the appearance that you, as a player, are running after him as well. And those sequences at the end of the game, those are some breathtaking shots if you ask me. I don't know about you, but I can appreciate a well done camera work, whether it's in a movie or in a game. Unfortunately, I have some bitter words of critique to spill onto this game. Of course I have. Nothing's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Except me. I don't like exploration in the latest God of War game. Yeah, I've said it, but don't get me wrong, please. I love the setting. Lands of Norse gods are beautiful. There are sights in this game that I would look at for minutes before I go on. The locations are amazing, but the way you explore them, not so much. The exploration is really stiff. You see, the world of God of War 4 is quite big, especially for this type of game. It has many islands, mountain paths, shores, caves, though those locations are very linear. Just look at this bridge. No, not this one. This one is from another realm of existence. Yeah, this is the bridge. Have you noticed that chest over there? You should think that ancient God of War would be able to jump off the bridge to loot that chest. But game doesn't think so. You see, in this installment, Kratos cannot jump. This problem was covered by Joseph Anderson, and because I don't see the point in repeating what has been already said, I just say, go, watch his video, if you haven't already of course. For me, locations are very restrictive and aren't much fun to navigate. One of the game developer's sins are unskippable cutscenes. They are especially annoying in games that can be played just for the gameplay. I wouldn't mind them in game like Life is Strange or Tales from Borderlands, but if the Dark Souls had minutes of unskippable cutscenes before every boss, I would be pretty annoyed. Matthew Matozis, if it is his real name, said that the newest God of War is good in many things, but isn't great at anything. Therefore it won't be brought up in any case studies about games. It won't be remembered for making anything innovating. Of course I couldn't disagree more. In my opinion, combat system in God of War 4 is definitely worth remembering. The sheer amount of details that you may have noticed while playing with all three weapons is enormous. You can clearly see that designers put a lot of time and effort in making Kratos swing and chop his axe in the most satisfying and convincing way. As you see in footage just playing in the background, there are so many ways enemies can respond to his attacks. Adding to that, I really like the way in which the story is told. What I mean is using 3 characters to tell you that story. Of course we have Kratos, who is a Greek warrior, and similar to the player, he is a newcomer to the Norse lands. Atreus, Kratos' son, was brought up in this land. Unlike Kratos, Atreus is curious of the world around him. Thanks to him, we learn many things about the gods or locations that we're visiting. And of course, we have Mimir, who joins our dysfunctional family in about 7th hour of the game. He's a man that... yeah, he was a man, okay? Now he's a talking head hanging by Kratos' belt. He is calling himself the smartest man alive, well, the smartest hanging head alive. And as you have already guessed, he's walking, again, hanging Wikipedia. So he's telling us many important things about Norse myths and game lore. And frankly, I think the trio of our characters is one of the brightest things in that story, in the story of the game, right? Yeah. God of War has changed. Like today is different from yesterday, so is God of War 2018 different from God of War 2005. We don't know what the future will bring to us. We don't know how the next God of War will look like. The only thing that we can be sure about is change, and how it is unavoidable. The Greek mythology killer has been a part of my life for quite some time now, and I can tell that yours too. We shouldn't judge a game by how it stands by compared to its predecessor. Let's appreciate games for what they are on their own. For changes. Cause changes, I know I tell it a lot, but they really are unavoidable. We as gamers have to learn how to enjoy what we have now, cause we never know what will come next. Who knows, it may be far worse than what we have now, so go and enjoy your favorite game. And yeah, I want it to be my message to you. Thank you. To the next time. Wow, I thought I'd never finish this. It took me like 3 months. To be honest, it took me 5 months. In the script I have 3 months, but I wrote it 2 months ago. So yeah, but I finally pulled myself together and wrote the script, then recorded my own voice, edited the video, but it's finally done, and only time will tell if it was worth it. 5 months is a long time, but I also had to manage my school and other stuff. As you can hear, unfortunately I'm not native English speaker. I hope that it isn't too big problem for you. Well, I would like to thank you for making it to the end. I look forward for your feedback. Please let me know if you like this critique of mine. I can't wait to see people's reaction to my humble opinion. Yeah, I plan to make a long form video analysis of Sekiro now. We'll see how long it will take me. If you want me to criticize other games, just write to me. Email should be in the description below. Thank you once again, and see ya to the next time.